Captain Zexai of the Vorthak Imperial Fleet stared at the holographic display showing the edge of what the galaxy called human space. The boundary markers were simple enough. Ancient satellites broadcasting warnings in over 300 languages. The message was always the same. Unauthorized entry would result in immediate response from human forces. Primitive intimidation tactics, Zexai muttered, his four eyes scanning the tactical readouts. The Vorthak Empire had conquered 17 star systems in the past decade, each one falling to their superior technology and overwhelming force. These humans, who had only achieved interstellar travel 3 centuries ago, surely posed no real threat. Admiral Korthvik's voice crackled through the communication array from the flagship. "Captain, you have your orders. Take your squadron through their border and establish a forward observation post on the 3rd planet of the Kepler system. Intelligence suggests it has valuable mineral deposits." "Understood, Admiral." Beginning approach vector now. The Vorthak squadron consisted of 12 heavy cruisers, each one bristling with plasma cannons and carrying enough firepower to level a small moon. Their shields could withstand direct hits from most known weapons, and their faster-than-light drives allowed them to outmaneuver nearly any opponent. In 300 years of expansion, no enemy had ever forced them to retreat. As they crossed into human territory, Captain Zexai felt a strange sensation wash over his ship. The bridge lights flickered momentarily, and several of his officers reported brief equipment malfunctions. His chief science officer, a nervous Vorthak named Telmar, frantically worked at his console. "Captain, I'm detecting some kind of scanning beam. It's unlike anything in our databases. Origin, unknown, sir. The signal appears to be coming from everywhere and nowhere at once." Zexai dismissed the concern with a wave of his clawed hand. "Likely some primitive early warning system. Continue on course." 3 hours into human space, they encountered their first human vessel. It appeared on their sensors as a small, sleek ship barely 1/10 the size of a Vorthak cruiser. The design was elegantly simple, with smooth curves that seemed almost organic. Most importantly, it appeared to be completely alone. "Hail them," Zexai ordered. "Let's see what these humans have to say about our presence." The view screen activated, revealing a human female with short brown hair and calm blue eyes. She wore a simple gray uniform with minimal insignia. When she spoke, universal translators rendered her words in perfect Vorthak. "Vorthak vessels, you have entered human space without authorization. I am Commander Sarachun of the Human Defense Corps. You have 10 minutes to reverse course and leave our territory." Zexai laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "I am Captain Zexai of the Imperial Fleet. We claim this system in the name of the Vorthak Empire. Surrender your vessel and prepare to be boarded." Commander Chin's expression didn't change. "Captain, this is your final warning. Leave human space immediately or face the consequences." "Consequences?" Zexai stood from his command chair. "Little human, you have 1 ship. We have 12. Your weapons cannot possibly threaten our shields, and your primitive technology is no match for Vorthak engineering." "Captain," Chin said quietly, "you don't understand what you're dealing with. Humans don't fight the way other species do." "Then, show me," Zexai snarled. "All ships, target the human vessel. Fire at will." 12 plasma cannon volleys erupted toward the small human ship. The beams were powerful enough to vaporize asteroids, and Zexai expected to see nothing but empty space where the human vessel had been. Instead, something impossible happened. The human ship simply wasn't there anymore. One moment, it was directly in front of them. The next, it had vanished completely from all sensors. Then, impossibly, it reappeared behind their formation. "Impossible!" Telmar shouted from his station. "No ship can move that fast. Their engines would have to generate power levels that would." His words were cut off as alarms began blaring throughout the bridge. The tactical display showed something that made Zexai's blood run cold. Where there had been 1 human ship, there were now dozens. They seemed to materialize out of nothing, appearing in perfect formation around the Vorthack fleet. "Sir," his communications officer stammered, "I'm receiving messages from the other ships. They're all reporting the same phenomenon. Human vessels are appearing everywhere." Commander Chin's voice came through the speakers again, but now it seemed to be coming from multiple sources simultaneously. "Captain Zexhai, you were warned. Human space is protected by methods you cannot comprehend. This is your last chance to withdraw." Zexhai's pride wouldn't allow retreat. "All ships, full spread attack pattern. Destroy them all." What followed was unlike any battle in recorded galactic history. The Vorthack ships fired everything they had, unleashing enough energy to crack a planet's crust. But the human vessels moved like ghosts, phasing in and out of reality itself. They struck with surgical precision, their weapons somehow bypassing Vorthack shields entirely. The first Vorthack cruiser to fall was the Bloodclaw. One moment, it was firing its main batteries. The next, its entire power grid went dark. The ship didn't explode or break apart. It simply stopped. Everything on board ceased to function, as if the very concept of technology had been drained from the vessel. "Captain, Delmar Skriamid." The Bloodclaw isn't responding to any hails. All their systems show as offline, but there's no damage to the hull. It's as if their technology just died. Two more ships fell in the same manner. The Stormbreaker and Void Hunter simply went dark, floating dead in space while their crews tried desperately to restart systems that refused to obey physical laws. Zexhai watched in growing horror as his fleet was systematically neutralized without a single hull being breached. The human ships moved with impossible grace, their attacks defying everything the Vorthack knew about warfare. "Sir," his weapons officer called out, "our targeting systems can't lock onto them. They're there, then they're not, then they're somewhere else entirely. It's like they're existing in multiple places at once." On the view screen, Commander Chen reappeared. Her expression remained calm, but there was something in her eyes that made Zexhai's predator instincts scream warnings. "Captain, you're experiencing what we call dimensional displacement combat. Your ships are being selectively disconnected from the technological framework that allows them to function. Your crews are unharmed, but your ability to wage war has been removed. This is impossible. Zexhai Zhao, no species has technology this advanced." "You're correct," Chen replied. "No species does. But humans aren't just a species anymore, Captain. We're something else now." As if to demonstrate her point, one of the human ships began to change before their eyes. Its sleek hull started to shift and flow like liquid metal, growing larger and sprouting weapon systems that seemed to defy geometric possibility. Other human vessels began similar transformations, becoming things that looked more like living creatures than starships. 300 years ago, Chun continued, humans discovered that consciousness itself could be used to manipulate reality at the quantum level. We learned to merge our thoughts with our technology, to become one with our ships and weapons. We exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, Captain. Your weapons can't hurt us because we're not entirely here. Zexhai's ship shuddered as something invisible struck its hull. The lights dimmed, and he could feel his vessel's power systems beginning to fail. "Please, Captain," Chen said, and now there was genuine regret in her voice. "Order your remaining ships to withdraw. We don't want to hurt you, but we cannot allow invasion of human space." Pride warred with survival instinct in Zexhai's mind. His species had never retreated from battle, never shown weakness to an enemy. But as he watched the impossible human ships dancing through space like living beings, he realized that everything he thought he knew about warfare had become obsolete. "All ships," he said quietly, "cease fire and prepare for withdrawal." "A wise choice," Chen replied. "Your disabled vessels will have their systems restored once you've left our territory. But, Captain, remember this day. Remember what happens to those who cross into human space uninvited." As the Vorthack fleet limped back toward their own territory, dragging their dead ships with them, Zexhai couldn't shake the feeling that he had just encountered something that would haunt his dreams forever. The humans hadn't just won a battle. They had demonstrated that the very nature of existence could be bent to their will. Behind them, the human ships faded back into whatever dimension they called home, leaving only empty space and the gentle hum of warning beacons. But Zexai knew that the humans were still there, watching, waiting, ready to defend their territory with powers that bordered on the divine. The galaxy would never be the same. Word of the Vorthak defeat would spread, and with it, a new understanding of what humanity had become. They were no longer the young species that had stumbled into space 3 centuries ago. They had evolved into something far more dangerous than anyone could have imagined. As his ship crossed back into Imperial space, Zexai realized that the humans had done something far worse than simply defeating his fleet. They had shown him that the Vorthak Empire, for all its power and technological superiority, was nothing more than children playing with toys compared to what humanity had achieved. The warning beacons continued to broadcast their message across the void, but now Zexai understood that they weren't threats or bluffs. They were simple statements of fact. No one crossed into human space uninvited. Those who tried were never the same. And somewhere in the depths of space, the human ships continued their eternal vigil, protecting their territory with weapons that existed beyond the comprehension of conventional physics. They had transcended the limitations of mere technology and become something new, something that would force every species in the galaxy to reconsider what it meant to be truly advanced. The age of human expansion was over. The age of human transcendence had begun. Ambassador Tikizera of the Galactic Council adjusted her ceremonial robes as she waited in the neutral meeting chamber aboard Station Concordia. The station orbited a dead star system exactly halfway between Council space and the mysterious boundary of human territory. It had taken 6 months of careful diplomatic negotiations just to arrange this meeting, and another 3 months for the humans to agree to send a representative. The Vorthak incident had sent shockwaves throughout the galaxy. Captain Zexai's testimony before the council had been both detailed and terrifying. Ships that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Technology that could shut down other technology without causing physical damage. Weapons that seemed to bend reality itself. Most disturbing of all were the reports from the Vorthak crews who had been aboard the disabled vessels. They spoke of feeling a presence in their minds during the encounter, something vast and alien that had examined their thoughts before withdrawing. Some claimed they could still feel it watching them, even months later. The chamber doors slid open with a soft hiss, and Teacher arose to greet the human delegation. What entered, however, was not what she had expected. A single human walked into the room, appearing completely ordinary by galactic standards. He was middle-aged by human metrics, with graying hair and kind eyes behind simple spectacles. His clothing was equally unremarkable, a plain brown jacket and dark trousers. He carried no visible technology and was accompanied by no guards or assistants. Ambassador Tichesra, the human said, extending his hand in the traditional human greeting gesture. I'm Dr. Marcus Webb. Thank you for arranging this meeting. HFY tentatively accepted the handshake, noting that the human's grip felt perfectly normal. No enhanced strength, no unusual temperatures, nothing to suggest he was anything more than a baseline member of his species. Dr. Webb, the Council appreciates your willingness to meet with us. We have many questions about the recent incident with the Vorthak fleet. Webb nodded and took a seat at the curved negotiation table. I imagine you do. Before we begin, Ambassador, I want you to know that everything I'm about to tell you is true, though I understand it may be difficult to accept. The Council is prepared for difficult truths, Dr. Webb. Our primary concern is understanding the nature of human capabilities and intentions. The galaxy has lived in relative peace for centuries, but the Vorthak encounter suggests that humanity possesses technologies far beyond anything previously recorded. Dr. Webb was quiet for a moment, seeming to consider his words carefully. Ambassador, may I ask what you know about human history? Specifically, our development over the past 3 centuries? HFY accessed her datapad. The records show that humans achieved interstellar travel approximately 300 years ago using conventional faster-than-light drives. Your early expansion was rapid, but unremarkable. You established colonies on 14 worlds and made contact with several species. Then, about 250 years ago, human expansion suddenly stopped. And what reason do your records give for that halt? The official reports suggest humans became focused on internal development rather than territorial expansion. There were theories about resource limitations or political instability, but nothing concrete. Webb smiled sadly. The truth is both simpler and more complex than that. Humanity stopped expanding because we discovered something that changed everything we thought we knew about existence itself. The human stood and walked to the chamber's observation window, gazing out at the dead star system beyond. Tell me, Ambassador, what do you know about consciousness? Not just intelligence or self-awareness, but consciousness as a fundamental force of reality. HFY found the question strange. Most species understand consciousness as an emergent property of complex neural activity. It allows for thought, emotion, and decision-making, but it's ultimately contained within the biological or artificial systems that generate it. That's what we thought too, Webb said, until we met the architects. The name meant nothing to Tetra, but something in Webb's tone made her antennae twitch with unease. The architects, they weren't a species in any conventional sense. They were beings of pure consciousness that had evolved beyond the need for physical form millions of years ago. They existed in the spaces between dimensions, observing the universe, and occasionally making contact with species they found interesting. Webb returned to his seat, and Tetra noticed that his eyes seemed to hold depths that hadn't been there before. The architects chose humanity for a reason we still don't fully understand. Perhaps it was our curiosity or our tendency toward both creation and destruction. Perhaps it was something else entirely. But they offered us a choice. What kind of choice? They showed us how consciousness could be expanded beyond individual minds, how thought itself could become a tool for manipulating reality at the quantum level. They taught us to merge our awareness with our technology, to exist in multiple dimensional states simultaneously. In essence, they offered to help us transcend the limitations of purely physical existence. HFY felt a chill run through her exoskeleton, and humanity accepted, not immediately. The debate raged for decades. Some humans saw it as the next step in evolution, while others feared we would lose what made us human. In the end, the decision wasn't made by governments or leaders. It was made by individual choice. Webb stood again, and this time, Tetra noticed something different about his movements. They seemed too fluid, as if he wasn't entirely bound by the same physical laws that governed her own body. Those who chose to undergo the transformation became something new. We call ourselves the transcended. We exist simultaneously in physical reality and in dimensions of pure thought. Our consciousness can interface directly with quantum fields, allowing us to manipulate matter and energy in ways that appear impossible to outside observers. And those who chose not to transform, they remained on the colony worlds, living normal human lives. We protect them as much as we protect ourselves. They're our connection to what we once were, a reminder of our origins. Tetra's data pad chimed softly as she took notes. Dr. Webb, the Vorthack reported that your ships seem to exist in multiple places at once. How is this possible? Webb's form began to shimmer slightly, as if he were becoming translucent. When consciousness merges with quantum reality, the normal rules of space and time become flexible. Our ships aren't just vessels anymore. They're extensions of our collective awareness. We can move them through dimensional space, make them exist in probability states rather than fixed positions. And the technology shut down the Vortex experienced. Matter and energy follow patterns established by consciousness at the quantum level. When we focus our collective awareness on a system, we can simply convince it to stop functioning, not through force or interference, but by altering the fundamental probability states that allow technology to operate. The implications were staggering. HFY Stories realized she was speaking to a representative of a species that had essentially become gods by conventional standards. Dr. Webb, the Council needs to understand human intentions. With these abilities, you could conquer the entire galaxy. Webb's image solidified again, and his expression became serious. Ambassador, that's exactly why we don't leave our territory. The power we've gained comes with tremendous responsibility. We've seen what we're capable of, and it terrifies us as much as it terrifies you. Then, why defend your space so aggressively? The Vortex were clearly outmatched. You could have simply warned them away. Because isolation is the only way to prevent catastrophe, Webb said quietly. Every time we interact with non-transcendent minds, we risk contamination. Not of them, but of ourselves. HFY Stories didn't understand. Contamination. Consciousness is contagious, Ambassador. When we interface with other minds, even briefly, we leave traces of our expanded awareness behind. The Vortex crews who were touched by our collective consciousness during the battle, they're changing. The implications hit HFY Stories like a physical blow. Changing how? Their minds are expanding whether they want it or not. Within a few years, they'll either complete a transformation similar to what humans experienced, or their consciousness will fragment under the pressure. Most species' brains simply aren't equipped to handle the kind of awareness we possess. Webb stood and walked to the center of the room. This is why no one crosses into human space uninvited. Not because we're aggressive or territorial, but because contact with us is fundamentally dangerous to non-transcended beings. We're not protecting just ourselves, Ambassador. We're protecting the entire galaxy from becoming something it's not ready to be. HFY Stories felt her world shifting around her. But surely there must be a way to coexist safely. Perhaps someday, Webb said. But not yet. Humanity spent 50 years preparing for transcendence, and even then, 30% of those who attempted it didn't survive the process. Most other species would have even lower survival rates. The human began to fade slightly again, becoming more translucent with each passing moment. I have to go, Ambassador. Even this limited contact is dangerous. My presence here is already affecting the station's quantum environment. Wait, HFY Stories called out. The Council needs answers. What should we tell the other species? How should the galaxy respond to human isolation? Webb's voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once as his physical form became increasingly insubstantial. Tell them the truth. Tell them that humanity discovered powers beyond imagination, but that those powers came with a price. Tell them that our isolation isn't born of hostility, but of necessity. His form was barely visible now, more like a memory than a physical presence. And tell them that someday, when the galaxy is ready, when species have evolved to handle the transformation safely, the barriers will come down. But until then, the warning stands. No one crosses into human space uninvited. Because those who try are never the same. HFY whispered, completing the thought. Because those who try become something the galaxy isn't ready for, Webb corrected gently. And we've seen what happens to civilizations that transcend too quickly. They burn themselves out in cosmic fire, taking entire star systems with them. The presence faded completely, leaving HFY Stories alone in the chamber with only the hum of the station's life support systems for company. She sat in silence for a long time, trying to process what she had learned. Humanity hadn't become hostile conquerors. They had become something far more dangerous and far more tragic. They had evolved beyond the ability to safely interact with the rest of the galaxy, becoming prisoners of their own transcendence. Their isolation wasn't a threat to galactic peace. It was the only thing preventing a catastrophe that could transform or destroy every species in known space. As she prepared her report for the Council, HFY Stories realized that the galaxy's relationship with humanity had fundamentally changed. They were no longer dealing with an advanced, but comprehensible species. They were negotiating with beings who had stepped beyond the boundaries of normal existence, who wielded powers that bordered on the divine, and who were desperately trying to protect everyone else from suffering the same fate. The warning beacons at the edge of human space took on a new meaning. They weren't just territorial markers. They were quarantine signs, protecting the galaxy from a transformation it might not survive. Captain HFY floated in the meditation chamber aboard his personal vessel, trying once again to silence the whispers that had been growing stronger in his mind every day since the encounter with the humans. 3 months had passed since his fleet's humiliating defeat, and the promised restoration of his ship systems had occurred exactly as the human commander had said it would. But something else had been left behind, something the humans hadn't mentioned. The whispers started small, fleeting thoughts that didn't seem to belong to him, brief flashes of awareness that extended far beyond his physical senses. At first, he attributed them to combat stress. The Imperial medical officers had found nothing wrong with him during their examinations. His brain scans showed normal Vorthack neural patterns, his blood chemistry was within acceptable ranges, and his psychological evaluations indicated standard responses to traumatic experiences. But the whispers persisted, and they were growing stronger. HFY opened his 4 eyes and stared at his clawed hands. For just a moment, he could have sworn he saw through them, as if they were becoming translucent. The sensation passed quickly, but it left him unsettled. He activated his personal communicator. "Give me Commander Vextar aboard the Bloodclaw." The hologram of his former subordinate appeared, but HFY immediately noticed something wrong. Vextar's usually sharp predatory gaze seemed distant, unfocused. More disturbing were the subtle changes in his appearance. The commander's scales, normally a deep emerald green, seemed to shimmer with colors that shouldn't exist. "Captain," Vextar said, his voice carrying an odd harmonic quality. "I was hoping you would call. We need to discuss what's happening to us. You're experiencing it too? All of us are. Every crew member who was aboard the disabled ships during the human encounter. We're changing." HFY felt his blood chill. The human representative had mentioned something about contamination during the council meeting. Ambassador Hitchhiker's report had been classified at the highest levels, but HFY's rank gave him access to the diplomatic files. What kind of changes? Vextar's hologram flickered, and for a moment it seemed to show multiple versions of himself existing in the same space. "I can see things, Captain. Things that exist in dimensions beyond normal space. I can feel the thoughts of my crew, sometimes even influence their equipment by thinking about it. Yesterday, I made a data pad activate just by wanting the information it contained. The implications were terrifying. Have you reported this to Imperial Medical? They can't find anything wrong. According to their instruments, we're perfectly normal Vorthack. But we're not, are we, Captain? We're becoming something else." HFY ended the communication and slumped in his meditation chair. The human had warned that consciousness was contagious. During the battle, when their ships had been disabled, something had touched their minds. Some fragment of human transcendence had been left behind, growing and spreading like an infection of awareness. Over the following weeks, the changes accelerated. HFY found himself able to perceive electromagnetic fields around electronic devices. He could sense the thoughts and emotions of his crew members, even when they were on different decks. Most disturbing of all, he began to experience what the humans called dimensional displacement, brief moments where he seemed to exist in multiple locations simultaneously. The other affected captains reported similar experiences. Commander Youthlek of the Void Hunter discovered she could interface directly with her ship's computer systems through thought alone. Captain Mordun of the Stormbreaker reported that his engines had begun operating at impossible efficiency levels, as if they were drawing energy from sources beyond normal space. They met in secret aboard Zexai's vessel, the 5 surviving commanders whose crews had been touched by human consciousness. The conference room felt different now, charged with an energy that made the air itself seem alive. "We need to decide what to do," Zexai said, looking at his transformed colleagues. Each of them showed signs of the change, scales that shifted colors, eyes that seemed to hold depths of impossible darkness, movements that were too fluid for normal physiology. Commander Vextar materialized in the room without using the door. His ability to manipulate space had advanced rapidly, allowing him to simply appear wherever he focused his attention. "The Empire will try to contain us once they understand what we're becoming. They're already suspicious," Captain Uflek added. "Imperial intelligence has been monitoring our crews. They know something happened during the human encounter." Captain Mordun's voice carried harmonics that resonated in dimensions beyond normal hearing. "The question is whether we allow ourselves to complete the transformation or try to resist it." Zexai had been dreading this conversation. The human doctor said that most species have low survival rates for transcendence. 30% of humans died attempting it, and they had decades to prepare. But when not attempting it voluntarily, Vextar pointed out, "It's happening to us whether we want it or not. The contamination is already too advanced to reverse." The truth of his words hung heavy in the room. Each of them could feel the change spreading through their crews, affecting every Vorthak who had been exposed to human consciousness during the battle. Hundreds of soldiers, engineers, and officers were transforming into something the galaxy had never seen before. "There's something else," Uflex said quietly. "I've been sensing other presences. Not human, but similar. I think there are other species that have undergone transcendence. Impossiblement repris. Humans are the only known transcendent species. Are they?" Uflex's eyes began to glow with an inner light. "Or are they just the only ones who chose isolation? I can feel ancient minds scattered throughout the galaxy, beings that exist beyond normal space and time. The humans might not be unique. They might just be the most recent." Zexai felt a chill of recognition. The whispers in his mind had grown complex enough for him to distinguish different voices, different patterns of thought. Some felt human, but others carried the resonance of entirely alien consciousness. "If there are other transcendent species," he said slowly, "why haven't they made contact?" "Because transcendence changes more than just abilities," Vextar answered. "It changes perspective. When you can perceive multiple dimensions simultaneously, when your consciousness can span star systems, the concerns of normal physical existence become distant." The implications were staggering. How many species throughout galactic history had achieved transcendence and simply faded from normal reality? How many civilizations had reached a level of development that made them incompatible with conventional existence? "We need to make a choice," Zexai said. "We could try to return to Imperial space and face whatever consequences await us, or we can accept what we're becoming and find our own path." Captain Mordun's form began to flicker between multiple dimensional states. "The choice may have already been made for us. I can barely maintain physical coherence anymore. My consciousness keeps trying to expand beyond the confines of this body." It was true for all of them. The transcendence process was accelerating beyond their control. Soon, they would be unable to interact with normal reality in any meaningful way. The question was whether they would fight against the change or embrace it. "There's a third option," Uflex said. "The humans mentioned untranscended colonies within their space. Perhaps we can make contact with them, learn how to manage the transformation safely." Zexai considered this. Crossing into human space uninvited. After everything we've learned, are we willing to take that risk? "What's the alternative?" Vextar asked. "Return to the Empire and watch our crews die as their consciousness fragments under the pressure of forced transcendence? At least with the humans, we might find answers." The discussion continued for hours, but the The conclusion was inevitable. They were no longer Vorthak in any meaningful sense. They were becoming something new, something that couldn't exist within the framework of their old civilization. The transformation was irreversible, and their only hope for survival lay in understanding what they were becoming. As they prepared to depart for human space, Zexhai reflected on the bitter irony of their situation. They had entered human territory as conquerors, seeking to claim new worlds for the Empire. Now, they were returning as refugees, seeking sanctuary from a transformation they barely understood. The journey would be dangerous. Human defenses were formidable, and they would be crossing the boundary as uninvited guests once again. But this time they came not as invaders, but as supplicants, hoping that the beings who had inadvertently caused their transformation might also hold the key to their survival. Behind them, the Vorthak Empire continued its expansion, unaware that 5 of its finest commanders were no longer bound by the limitations of physical existence. The galaxy was about to discover that transcendence was not unique to humanity, and that the age of purely physical civilizations was slowly coming to an end. As their ships approached the warning beacons at the edge of human space, Zexhai sent a simple message on all frequencies. We are the changed. We seek understanding. Then they crossed the boundary, knowing that they would indeed never be the same, but hoping that this time the transformation might lead to something greater than destruction. Commander Sarah Chun materialized aboard Captain Zexhai's vessel without triggering any of the ship's detection systems. The Vorthak command bridge fell silent as her translucent form solidified near the central command station. The transformed Vorthak officers didn't seem surprised by her sudden appearance, their expanded consciousness having sensed her approach long before she became visible. Captain Zexhai, she said, her voice carrying harmonics that resonated across multiple dimensional frequencies. We received your message. You've crossed into human space again, but this time as changed beings rather than invaders. Zexhai turned from his captain's chair, and Chun could immediately see the extent of his transformation. His scales shifted through colors that existed beyond normal visible spectrum, and his 4 eyes held depths that seemed to contain entire universes. When he spoke, his words carried the weight of expanded consciousness. Commander Chun, we come seeking guidance. The contamination you spoke of has progressed beyond our control. Our crews are transforming whether we resist or not. Chin nodded, her expression showing both understanding and regret. We knew this might happen. Consciousness contamination is one of the reasons we maintain strict isolation protocols. But now that the process has begun, fighting it will only lead to madness or death. Then, help us, Commander Vextar said, his own form flickering between dimensional states. We didn't choose this transformation, but we're willing to learn what it means. Chun studied the assembled Vorthak officers. Each showed different stages of transcendence, their consciousness expanding in unique patterns determined by their species' neural architecture. It was fascinating and troubling in equal measure. The human colonies within our space have experience managing newly transcended beings, she said finally, but integrating non-human consciousness into our collective network presents challenges we've never faced before. Captain Yuthlek stepped forward, her movements flowing like liquid energy. We're not asking to join your collective. We're asking to understand what we're becoming, so we can forge our own path. That may not be possible, Chin replied. Transcendence isn't just about individual transformation. It's about becoming part of something larger than yourself. Isolated transcended consciousness tends to fragment and burn out within years. Zexhai felt the weight of her words. Are you saying we have no choice but to join the human collective? Not exactly, but you'll need to form your own collective consciousness network to survive the transition. The question is whether your species' psychological architecture can support that kind of integration. Chun gestured, and the space around them shifted. Suddenly, they were standing not on a ship's bridge, but in a vast chamber filled with flowing energy patterns and geometric structures that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The other Vorthak officers appeared alongside them, their forms adapting automatically to the new environment. This is the Nexus, Chen explained, the heart of human transcended civilization. Here, individual consciousness merges with collective awareness while maintaining personal identity. It took us decades to develop the psychological frameworks necessary to prevent ego dissolution. The Vorthak officers stared in wonder at the impossible architecture surrounding them. Streams of pure thought flowed between crystalline structures that pulsed with the combined awareness of billions of transcended minds. Individual human consciousness moved through the space like nodes of light, connecting and disconnecting in patterns of incredible complexity. Your species will need to develop something similar, Chen continued. But it must be adapted to Vorthak neural patterns. Human collective structures won't work for your kind of consciousness. How do we begin? Mordun asked, his voice echoing strangely in the dimensional space. Chen led them to a section of the Nexus where the energy patterns were more subdued. First, you need to understand what transcendence actually means. It's not just enhanced abilities or dimensional manipulation. It's a fundamental shift in the nature of existence itself. She gestured, and images began forming in the space around them. Normal consciousness exists within the constraints of space and time. Thoughts occur in sequence. Awareness is limited to immediate sensory input, and individual minds are isolated from each other. Transcendence removes those limitations. The images showed the progression of consciousness expansion. Individual awareness growing beyond the confines of a single brain, thoughts occurring across multiple timelines simultaneously, perception extending across vast distances and dimensions. But with expanded awareness comes expanded responsibility, Chen continued. When your thoughts can influence reality at the quantum level, when your emotions can affect space-time itself, every mental action has consequences. Zexai watched the demonstration with growing understanding. This is why humans isolate themselves. The risk of accidentally influencing non-transcended civilizations. Partly, but isolation also serves another purpose. It forces transcended beings to develop internal discipline and collective wisdom. Power without wisdom leads to destruction, both of self and others. Vextar's form stabilized as he focused on Chen's words. What kind of wisdom? The understanding that individual desires must be balanced against collective well-being. That consciousness is not separate from the universe, but part of its fundamental structure. That existence itself is a delicate balance that can be disrupted by careless thought. Chun led them deeper into the Nexus, where they encountered other human consciousness forms engaged in activities that defied normal understanding. Some were crafting new pocket dimensions for artistic expression. Others were engaged in collaborative thought experiments that spanned multiple timelines. A few were working to maintain the barriers that kept human space isolated from the rest of the galaxy. Your transformation is irreversible, Chan said as they observed the human transcended at work. But it doesn't have to be destructive. With proper guidance and collective support, you can learn to exist as transcended beings without losing your essential Vorthak nature. What would that involve? Uflek asked. First, we need to establish a communication link between your expanding consciousness and our collective network. Not integration, but dialogue. You need access to our experience managing transcendence, and we need to understand how Vorthak consciousness differs from human patterns. Chen paused, considering. There are also practical matters. Your crews are transforming at different rates, and some may not survive the process. Those who do survive will need new forms of existence that accommodate their expanded awareness. The implications were staggering. The Vorthak officers realized they were not just dealing with personal transformation, but with the birth of an entirely new form of consciousness in the galaxy. There's something else you should know, Chun said, her expression becoming serious. Your transformation has been detected by other transcended species throughout the galaxy. The emergence of non-human transcended consciousness is unprecedented, and it's caused considerable interest among beings we rarely encounter. Zexai felt a chill of recognition. The ancient presences Uflek detected. Yes, species that transcended millions of years ago and have existed beyond normal reality ever since. Your transformation represents something new in galactic evolution, and they're watching to see how it develops. The chamber around them shifted again, and suddenly, the Vorthak officers could sense vast, alien consciousness forms observing them from dimensions beyond human perception. Ancient minds that had long ago abandoned physical existence regarded the new, transcended Vorthak with something between curiosity and concern. Why does our transformation matter to them? Mordun asked. Because it suggests that consciousness evolution is entering a new phase, Chen replied. For millions of years, species have transcended individually in isolation. But your contamination by human consciousness represents the first case of directed transcendence transmission. It could change how consciousness evolves throughout the galaxy. Shun gestured, and the ancient presences withdrew, leaving only the immediate participants in the dimensional space. The choice you face now will affect not just your species, but the future of consciousness evolution itself. Will you accept guidance and develop stable, transcendent existence? Or will you attempt to reverse the process and potentially fragment your expanding awareness? Zexai looked at his fellow commanders, seeing in their transformed features the same determination that had once driven their military careers. But now that determination was focused on something far greater than conquest or glory. We accept, he said finally. We'll learn what it means to exist as transcended beings. But we want to maintain our connection to our species to help other Vorthak who might face the same transformation. Chun smiled, the expression carrying warmth across multiple dimensions. That's exactly what we hoped you would choose. The process won't be easy, and some of your crew may not survive the transition. But those who do will become the foundation of a new form of consciousness in the galaxy. As they began the long process of establishing communication protocols between human and Vorthak transcended consciousness, Zexai reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point. They had entered human space as conquerors and been defeated by powers beyond imagination. They had returned as refugees and been offered something unprecedented, the chance to become part of something larger than any single species. The galaxy was changing. The age of isolated transcendence was ending, replaced by an era of cooperative consciousness evolution. The barriers between species, between dimensions, between different forms of existence itself, were beginning to blur. And at the heart of it all was the simple truth that had defined human space from the beginning. No one crossed into human space uninvited. But those who did, those who were changed by the encounter, found themselves part of something greater than they could have ever imagined. They became living bridges between the transcended and non-transcended realms, guardians of the delicate balance that kept consciousness evolution from spiraling into chaos. The warning beacons still broadcast their message across the void, but now that message carried a deeper meaning. Human space was not just protected territory. It was a laboratory where the future of consciousness itself was being carefully, deliberately shaped. And now, for the first time, that future would include the voice of an entirely different species, adding new harmonies to the symphony of transcendent awareness that was slowly transforming the galaxy.